Hello, and thank you for joining us on Speaking with Andrea today. This is our first show of the new season, season number 7, and we are really excited about it because we have Congressman Tom Perriello here today. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you very much for having me. Congratulations on a new season.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I know most of our viewers are familiar with Congressman Perriello. In 2008, he ran against the 6th-term incumbent Virgil Gould, and he actually won the United States representative for the 5th District. Although by less than 1,000 votes and a recount, it was confirmed that he won. And here we are 2 years later, and it is time for those midterm elections. So although we're not here to do a campaign, we still thought it important to find out, learn about your successes and some of the challenges you've had in the past 2 years being congressman. So again, welcome to the show. There's a lot we need to cover today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Many of our viewers know you. They know Tom Perriello, but then there's some who I've heard about him, I've seen the name. Give us a little background of who Tom Perriello is. You were born and raised in this area, correct?
I was. I was born in Charlottesville. We lived for my first 5 years on Meadowbrook Road behind what later became Bodo's. And then we moved out to the county, to Ivy. My father, Vito Perriello, was a pediatrician here for 40 years. He had grown up very poor in West Virginia. His parents came over from Italy. My mom grew up in Ohio, and she was son of a high school math teacher and coach and fireman. And my dad got a scholarship to come to UVA and fell in love with the area, and so wanted to raise his family here. And so it was really the only home I ever knew, and grew up in a tradition both in our family and a faith community that really emphasized service. That we'd just been blessed to be born in America, blessed to be born into a family of means that gave me a chance at the best education in the world.
Wonderful.
And just wanting to give back in some way and serve with that. So, that was always what I wanted to do, whether it was going to be in the nonprofit sector or, what later became a desire to do public service. So, growing up around here, you learn a lot of history from certainly the Revolutionary period and Jefferson and the Founding Fathers. We have Civil War history. We have civil rights history that's still very raw. I mean, we still have people who lived through that struggle who have oral history that, I grew up listening to. And I think what you learn from that is that the greatness of this area is to always assume we can do better, to always dream of a country that's more fair, more equal, more just, that is more expansive in terms of all Americans being included in that. And, I wanted to be part of that historical arc in whatever small way I could be.
Okay. Well, and you've been active in your community since when? Since you graduated high school, or just all of your life? When?
Yeah, grew up volunteering. I was an Eagle Scout here in Troop 114, and that was really when I got started in community service here. I remember one of our first projects was to go to what we then called the Old People's Home, which wasn't very PC. And I remember dreading it. It was out in Crozet, and we were supposed to go out and talk to these folks. And I was like 12 at the time or something. And we were supposed to go for an hour, and I ended up staying for like 4 hours because I got to talk to these people who'd lived through the Depression and World War II, and it was just history books coming to life, and a lot of wisdom there. And so, I kind of learned early on that when you give in that way, you really end up receiving a lot more, and that was something echoed in my faith tradition. So, helping out with affordable housing projects, growing up, a food bank drive that I did at the time, and really just caught the bug for it early.
Okay. Well, we all know that you are campaigning to be reelected to be congressman again, correct? All right. And help me understand. It seems like you were just elected in 2008, and here you are again, going at it again. How does that work?
Well, in the original Constitution, the House of Representatives was a 2-year term, and it remains that. It was also the only body that was directly elected by the people in the original Constitution. The Senate was actually elected by state legislators to represent the state, and the president was the Electoral College, which was not a mere formality then. It was actually just electing people whose judgment you trusted to go pick a president. So their idea of campaigning was a lot different than what we have today. And I think they probably wouldn't be really pleased to see the sort of perpetual campaign environment, the amount of money involved and other things. I think one of the things that happened a year and a half ago was we came in with a real sense of commitment to solve problems. And I think, our side of the aisle, the Democrats, actually focused on doing what we were supposed to do, which was legislating and trying to get the economy turned around. Unfortunately, the other side wasn't that interested in that. They just wanted to set up the next election. And I think that's the worst kind of politics. We were on the verge of an economic depression. The president gave them a tremendous seat at the table, said, bring your best ideas. And they basically said, look, if this thing works, you're going to get the credit. If it doesn't work, we don't want any part of it. That's not statesmanship. That's not what the founders envisioned when they founded the republic. And so I think, it's unfortunate that the election cycles come on top of each other and that people start to put politics ahead of problem solving. But, for me, it's, there is no switching of gears. We were in the campaign. It was intense. Recount was intense. And then focused on solving problems. Right. And I think the best kind of campaigning should be to go out and solve problems, not to focus on nasty 30-second spots or make stuff up as the other side's doing about me. Focus on helping people, and I think that's what we've tried to do.
Have you all ever thought about doing what needs to be done to change that? So maybe you can stretch out the amount of time you spend in this position?
Yes. I mean, there's some things we could do right away. I'm a co-sponsor, for example, the Fair Elections Now Act, which is a creative approach to publicly financed elections, because part of the issue is how much money people have to raise for these campaigns. That could affect both the nature and the amount of time spent. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court went in the opposite direction with Citizens United and basically handed the keys to the kingdom over not only to the biggest corporations to try to buy these elections, but as we're seeing in the last couple of weeks, to foreign companies and countries for the first time ever in our history to come in and spend money trying to manipulate American elections. And the fact that the Republicans and their allies are out there taking money from Russia and China and Egypt and Bahrain is, seems to me just unbelievably against America's interest and against democracy.
Okay. Tell me, Tom, how do you balance legislating? How do you balance legislating and running for re-election? How do you balance that? How do you fulfill the duties that you were voted in to do, and then at the same time try to run a campaign? Well,
to me, it's the best way to legislate is to listen. The best way to campaign is to listen. A lot of this is about communication. And I think what some people have done that's created problems for them is that they don't show up for a year and a half, and then they show back up and say, vote for me. They'll show up in a church or at a park or whatever and say, hey, you remember me from 2 years ago. Well, we've been here every weekend. I come back and do those same meetings all the time. And so for me, I think there is no need to suddenly turn on the campaign switch because I think when you do your job well, and focus on listening and producing results, not just on the legislative level, but constituent services. The number of people we've helped who are facing foreclosure or unemployment benefits, or senior citizens and veterans who need their benefits that they've earned. My office has returned over $3 million to senior citizens and veterans who were not getting the benefits they were entitled to. So even at that level, it's just focused on being there doing your job. And I think if you do that, then when you show up before the election, people aren't seeing you for the first time. They're saying, hey, great to see you again. And I think that's what we've seen over the last few weeks, and it's been really rewarding.
So you're saying the 5th District can say that Tom, since November of 2008, has shown his face regularly?
Sure.
You're saying that?
We get high marks, even from my biggest critics, for showing up over and over again and for working hard. But I think for a lot of people, that makes a big difference. People work hard for their families. They expect someone who's been given the tremendous blessing that I've been given to serve in this, Congress, in the greatest democracy ever envisioned, would work just as hard for his or her constituents as they work for their family members. And that's what I try to do. And I also think it's why I've kind of challenged both parties in a way. I mean, I'm a Democrat, and I've been proud to stand with the president where I've agreed with him, but I've also disagreed at points and pushed back hard. Things like the Small Business Lending Fund were places where common sense won the day. Tax cuts to small business, helping lending to small business, quadrupling the tax exemption for starting a small business. That's something that anyone can do out of their home to try to live the American dream and move into the middle class. There are other places where, we have to start manufacturing some things in the U.S. again. We have to have jobs that are somewhere between, Wall Street millionaires and Walmart minimum wage. There've got to be more jobs in the middle, and that's what I've tried to go up there and challenge both parties to do.
Okay, let's go back to the year 2008, which was that election was just historic in every way. Of course, we had our first black president. Well, yeah, our first black person elected to the presidency, and you, who were at times considered an underdog to a 6-term incumbent, but yet you beat him out. When did you decide, I'm going to do this? It stopped being talk, and you decided, I'm going to put my hat in the ring to try to uproot Mr. Good.
Well, I had been to Afghanistan in 2005 in a nonprofit civilian capacity and went back in 2007. And I remember, when I was there that summer of 2007, feeling like, I'm sick of the politicians saying that they care about our troops but not having a strategy for victory, saying they care about our veterans but not taking care of these guys when they get home. And I was sick and tired of feeling like I was voting against people instead of for people. It seemed pretty clear that the Republicans had us on the wrong track, but it wasn't clear what the Democrats always stood for as an alternative. At this point, it wasn't clear whether President Obama was going to get in the race, or he may have announced, but it wasn't clear that he was going to win. I think Hillary was still the front runner. And so for me, the issue was, well, what if I did it in this case, in my community, and challenged someone who I thought had come to represent, though he started out as a great public servant, had come to represent a lot that was broken in our politics. And to do it not by following the playbook, but by throwing the playbook out. So, what I knew with this race was that no one thought I could win it. And normally when it's...
Why is that?
Well, this guy, Mr. Good had served for a long time. He had shown up at events for a long time. No one had come really within 20 points of him, including some pretty good people who'd run against him. And so he was seen as really untouchable. But I felt like that was because, he had been able to run campaigns a certain way because people went out and tried to tear him apart, but people liked him. And what we did was we actually focused not on what was wrong with him, but why we had a better strategy for jobs on the table. We put a positive agenda, and I think the electorate was in a positive mood in 2008, or a willingness to sort of swing for the fences on hope and change. And we, the campaign we had laid the groundwork for was certainly echoed in what the now president was doing. Let's play to people's best instincts and not their worst. Let's imagine what America could be in terms of its greatness again.